Welcome to Living in Harmony, a podcast for Christian parents who want to make the peace in their household without sacrificing their sanity. Here, we talk about everything from sibling rivalry to dating and how to raise your kids to be strong in their faith while maintaining your own. But don't worry, we're not all preachy here. That's the purpose of your church and your pastor. Here, we're here for you, to help you know you are not alone in this crazy journey called parenthood. So whether you're a seasoned pro or a brand new parent, Living in Harmony, this is the podcast for you. So grab some coffee or wine, we won't judge, and join us as we navigate the ups and downs of raising kids in a Christian household where the gospel is the center. Well, welcome to Living in Harmony. If it's your first time, my name's Delmar.
I'm Robert.
And I'm April.
And it is good to be here today. We have a nice South Carolina weather. You learn to enjoy that when you can around here, because tomorrow it'll be 100. The next day it'll be 50. But it is nice. It's nice outside. People are in good spirits. And it's been a decent week. How about y'all? How's y'all's week been? Let's go.
You go.
No, today's topic is a very good one because it's been a very busy week for us.
Busy, stressful.
Yes.
Just stressful time of year for me for work. So it's just our busiest season when we say the floodgates open, and we do a lot of work in a short amount of time. So
Lots of things going on at the house, lots of things going on with the family. So
it's
very busy.
That right before summer, we don't really sell that as much as we should. It's like as busy as Christmas season in a lot of ways.
Because, it can be.
I mean, right now we have students are transitioning to summer, so it's all the programming at church for that. Then you got all the kids' men end of the year parties, and then it's just a lot. And then graduation stuff coming up, graduation photos, and then this also wedding season. We your boys. Now I got two of their boys who are filming weddings with me, which is really nice. But yeah, it's been one of those weeks. I think we can get into what's been going on this week, but I think sometimes it's okay just to be like, it's one of those weeks. So it has been one of those weeks in our family, and which sparked some of our conversations today. So why don't we go ahead and just jump on
Dive
into
in.
it? That sound good? All right, let's go. Okay, so this week, my middle child, I don't know what has gone on. I don't know what's happened. This is not therapy, sort of.
Not exactly.
But he's just taken this turn where the answer's no, and he wants to poke your eyes out or gouge your eyes out, and then you tell him not to do that, and he keeps doing it, and then you try to discipline him one way, he looks at you and he's like, what you want? And then you try to discipline another way, it doesn't seem to work. And now we've got this weird dynamic where he's not doing it to me anymore, but he's doing it to mom, which is just as bad as doing it to me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, and I'm just at my wit's end. And I was sitting around thinking about this podcast. I'm like, I don't think I'm the only parent ever who has felt like they're completely at their wit's end. And that is exactly, this is one of those weeks. I'm not coming today as the professional. I'm coming today as somebody who's went and looked up some stuff and has prayed through some stuff. And we love getting the feedback on these podcasts. We get comments on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have any feedback, feel free to put in with this one. But today we're going to keep it really simple. And these are just a few things that we need to consider when we're at our wit's end as a parent, which seems to happen more frequently sometimes than others. And because that's where we're at in our house. We're at the wit's end. We love our kid. He's super cuddly one minute, and then the next minute we're like, Lord, help,
Right.
But you really do. These are weeks where you really do understand the depravity of man.
You really do.
Yeah.
You really do. So that being said, we're just going to jump right into this because I think it tethers to a lot of our lives very well. I think this stuff also translates to other areas of life, but man, it burrows down into our children. So the first thing I need to be reminded of is what our responsibility really is. So number one thing I want to lean into when we're talking about when we're at our wit's end, when I don't know what to do, I'm trying to do all the right things. I feel like I've done all the right things. And that is this: prioritize your effort. What I mean by that means, I don't know about you, sometimes I spend a whole lot of effort worrying. I spend a whole lot of effort saying, why is my kid not acting this way? Why am I doing it this way? But what I'm learning is, in Deuteronomy, we have pretty clearly laid out what our role as parents are. And our role doesn't say raise kids that turn out perfect.
Right?
That would be really depressing. I'm sure y'all know the passage. Our role is to teach kids. It is to raise them in the ways of the Lord. Right. So as we look into that, I would ask y'all as we get into this, what's the biggest temptation that keeps us from leaning into Scripture and its priority command for us to be more concerned with input than output when it comes to raising our kids?
Well, I think that there's a lot of temptation just in society, in our culture, and among friends and stuff, that you want to look like your kids are well behaved. You want to look like you have things together, And I think even within the church, the church doesn't always make it easy for people to say, these are the struggles that we're having right now. Sometimes people feel the need to, it's the same kind of thing of you walk into church on Sunday morning with a smile. How are you doing? Oh, fine. But the reality is sometimes it's not fine. And you should be able to share and say, hey, this is kind of what's going on. And as Christians, we should be able to, give each other grace, love each other, help each other through, and provide wisdom if you've been down that road, and and help encourage parents. And so I think sometimes there's a pressure from society to focus on the result, and we live in a society that wants things now, right? Everything we want instantly. The idea that you might have to be banking and layering, layers of effort and layers of things you're doing, and it's building, and you might see the results later. It's not going to be instant. Right. And I think sometimes that's hard to keep in mind. So I think that's one of the reasons.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we get in church and we listen to the sermons on how to parent and, give it to the Lord. But sometimes it just comes out different in our actions. And we see that there seems to be a mismatch between the priorities of our efforts, because yes, we should be concerned with our children's behavior, because that's where we lean in with our input and correction and discipline. But at the same time, I'll just read it, Deuteronomy 6, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord God is one. You shall love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. And you shall bind them as a sign in your hand, and they shall be as frontlets on your eyes. You shall write them on doorposts of your house and on your gates." And this is really clearly instructive towards parents. This is our role in parenting. It doesn't say give in to anxiety. It doesn't say help your kid become their true self.
Right.
It doesn't say any of that. It says, no, there is an objective truth. You pump that into your child. You live that out in front of your child through osmosis and through just instruction. They're surrounded with it, and our hope is that they're nurtured toward the Lord.
And something else that goes with that is, and you live it, and there's a big difference between parents who just tell their children, this is how to be, this is how to behave, this is what you should do, but then they don't model it at all. And so that's another key component, I think, is as part of that teaching it to your children when you walk, and when you're walking along the road, when you're putting it on your doorpost. There's all throughout, you're immersing yourself in it. It is the lens through which everything you view, the world through. It's the way you filter through, all of your actions, your behavior. Does that mean we're perfect? No, that's not what I mean. Obviously, we all mess up and things, but it's that attitude of, this is the life that we're living, and we're not just teaching you these things, but we're modeling them for you. We are all walking this walk together, and we're not telling you what to do. We're teaching you how.
And I think that's a really important thing when you talk about, like you said, it's a consistent thing. And something you said a minute ago, I had a note jotted down for later, but it's keeping that long-term, those long-term goals in mind. sometimes, you look at the behavior today or this week, it's like, oh my gosh, my kid is going to be in prison. It's like, well, okay, your kid's 6.
Thought that a time or two.
You got time. But I think as you think about it, when you look back at this passage, it's, teach these to your children diligently when you're walking, when you're sitting, when you get up, when you rise. It's all the time. So you are teaching, you're walking with, you're demonstrating as you do things in life together. It's really, really tempting, especially in our society, to say teaching is something that happens at school time, right?
Or at church.
Yeah, or at church in that, the Sunday school hour, or listening to the sermon, and that's when we teach. And everything else is just is other things. But I think if you really understand what this is talking about, God is telling us that we are, as a family, as parents, we are to pour ourselves into our children constantly. Every time that we have an opportunity. Oh, do you see how that worked? Do you see how, and when they're small, it's like, oh, look at the butterfly and how it flies, right? Look at the flower and how it grows. And then as it gets older, it's like, well, do you see what happened to that person, and what's happening now? And, he's sad because this, and we can help him because of this, she's having a bad day and we can help, or, those sorts of things. And it's all of those circumstances that you go through together and you do together that I think really allows those lessons to sink home.
Yeah, and I love how the Bible is so consistent within itself, right? Because there's other passages about families. Like, we know when it comes to our parents, our role there is to honor them. And there's no stipulation, honor them if they're on their best behavior, honor them if they're good parents. No, it just says honor them. And what I love is it's saying your responsibility is your actions. It's your input. You honor your parents. There's people now listening who have had to honor parents that the world would look at and say they don't deserve any honor. And you know what? That's honorable that you did that. And translate that same thing over to our kids. We can't force that, but we can lead them. We can lead them. And Robert, this segues really good into another point that we have down here. You just talked about how it takes noticing that your little girl is looking at a butterfly. It takes noticing that your little boy is really into dinosaurs. So the second thing, and this one actually, a lot of them, I can look at, laser focus on, and get to, but this one is so hard because the age we live in, and that is this: to practice mindful parenting. Practice mindful parenting, because that's how we find those teaching opportunities. And what we mean by mindful parenting is this: that you're just present and engaged in the parenting journey, right? That parenting mindfully, what that means is intentionally focus on each moment with your child. You value the quality over just the quantity. And you put away the distractions and prioritize. And I can't tell you how difficult this is for me. I mean, people listening, they're probably in the same boat. So much so that my wife just said Fridays are no screen day at our house. So if anyone needs to get a hold of me Friday, I apologize in advance. But this is a need because we're realizing that our attentions are kind of drawn.
Note to self: don't text Delmar.
Don't text Delmar. You can drive to the house though. I'll give you some sweet tea on the back porch. But that's the thing. It's how can we teach and instruct if we're not practicing being present? And I think this is really difficult on both sides of the spectrum, right? Because some parents are not home much because they're working, and when they get home, how tired are you, mom and dad? Oh. But then there's other parents, like my wife's going to be next year, a stay-at-home mom. And sometimes if you stay home all day, it's just so easy to just be in an autopilot and home. I've heard that it's you would think it wouldn't work this way, but it becomes equally as easy to not engage in mindful parenting when you're home all day. And I know that, April, you may have some experience with that. So I'd love to hear your insight. Like, how have you pulled that into your life?
Yeah. So yes, I was a stay-home mom with my kids as they were growing up, and I was actually a stay-home homeschool mom. So we were there all day long, and so because we were homeschooling, I was able to. There was a lot of mindfulness going into the teaching and talking with them about things. We got to have lots of really good opportunities for conversation because, everything that we taught, everything that they learned was anchored in the truth of God and how this, applies to our lives and things like that. So that was cool. But the flip side is that also when you're home together all the time, it's easy to think, well, we can do some quality stuff later because after all, we're here all day. So it could also get to where other times, and like this is just a short example, just a little illustration. I mean, I taught piano lessons for many years. For like 20 years, I taught piano lessons. And the joke, and this is actually pretty common. If there's any other piano teachers listening, a lot of them will be able to relate. You kind of can teach anybody's kid except your own, right? And sometimes piano teachers, and I know I'm not the only one, eventually like talked to a fellow friend who also taught piano lessons. Hey, how about, will you teach my kids? And sometimes you might swap, okay, yeah, I'll teach your kids. Can you teach mine? Because you would make time for everybody else who had scheduled lessons, but then your own children, you kind of thought, well, we can get to that later. We'll work that in maybe after dinner or something. But then it just wouldn't happen because you get busy with other things. So even though I taught for 20 years other people's kids, it was actually another teacher who taught my kids piano.
Yeah.
So, but and that's just kind of an example of the way, even if you're there, even if you're home, it can be easy to get into a rut of, well, I have to do laundry right now, or, oh, right now we have to do this other thing, or you need to clean your room and I've got to get started with dinner. But when you're trying to get started with dinner, you can do things like bring your kids along. Why don't you start, chopping some carrots or doing whatever, and you can kind of make it an activity that you guys do together. Does that mean you have to have your, 7-year-old helping you or 6-year-old helping with dinner every night? No. But I mean, you can look for opportunities to bring that in and have conversations as you do it. And so yes, it can happen to even those who are staying home.
And even as the dad coming home, right? You get in and it's like, okay, but now I've got to mow the lawn, or I've got to fix the sink, or I've got to do whatever the thing is. And sometimes it's a lot more difficult. It's easier to just say, oh, I'm going to put headphones on, or I'm going to go out here, and I don't really want the kids underfoot because they're in the way. Whereas of course, I didn't really let you do that too much because he'd come home from work and I'd be like, you're the parent on duty now because I need a break. No, that happened a lot, but it's also easy. It's easy to focus on those other things, and some of those are good things, right? The sink needs to get fixed, but hey, why don't you put the kid up and at least watch and hold the wrench and have a conversation while that's happening. And I won't pretend that I did that perfectly, but I tried to do it as much as I could, and I tried to include kids in things that I did. And those are things that are important. Those are times that are important. And I think that's what that passage in Deuteronomy is talking about. It's talking about involve the kids in what you're doing. In their society, it was a little bit easier because the kids were kind of inherently involved in the agricultural work that they did. For us, it's like I can't take my kid to work with me, but what I can do is take the kid out out to work in the garden, or to do whatever it is that we're doing. Cleaning up the house or whatever.
I think for me, there's a lot of times I want to take my kids out in the garden. I want to do this. I just forget. You forget that you need to be doing it. There's this little hack that I'm trying. Okay. I'll share it with you. So it has saved me on the motorcycle. So I watch a few YouTube channels with motorcycle because I ride a bike, and one of the guys made up this. I don't know if he made it up, but he brought it. It's called brown space. And you've heard of white noise. Brown noise is a type of noise, right? It's like a staticky noise, but it's a lot and nothing at the same time. And this is like whenever we're driving the car, and I'm like, how did I get to Walmart? I don't remember the last 10 minutes. I was just driving, trusting the instinct in my, base mind. We've all done that. That's
when I end up at Starbucks and I'm like, how did I get here?
I have left my house meaning to go to work and accidentally driven to somewhere like Walmart before because I'm in this just...
Delmar, that happened to me today.
Yes, it's that brown...
Not Walmart, but a different location, yes.
It's that brown space. It's just, I'm not thinking. So this guy said this on the channel, and I thought it was stupid. I even thought in my head that's stupid. As he was saying it, And then it started working in me, and I didn't even mean to. He's like, when you're riding around your motorcycle and you find yourself not thinking about the road and not looking, think to yourself, you're in the brown space. He goes, it will freak you out how much that'll pull you out of it. I am not kidding. I will be riding around and be like zoning out in brown space. I'm back. And it pulls me back fast. So like I'm trying to say, okay, where in my family? I'm in the brown space. If I'm just sitting around on the couch, I want my mind to be like, you're in the brown space. You're in that zombie mode. Go do something. And that's something I would offer, because I know it sounds silly, but it has actually saved me on the motorcycle, just because somebody was coming in my lane. I was like, I'm in the brown space. Oh my gosh, what's happening? Get out of it. But I think that's one of the hardest things about the mindful parenting, is because we have to capture our own mind. That's the work of the Spirit in us, but it's also like some disciplines that we need to have.
Yeah, and we don't like those disciplines. We don't like the physical disciplines. We don't like the spiritual disciplines. And there was a lot of wisdom in those ancient practices of, our religious tradition doesn't have like daily prayers throughout the day, but I can see the value in that.
Absolutely.
It sets a rhythm to your life, and it says, okay, every day I'm going to do this. Every morning I'm going to do this. And it allows you to build that habit. And so having those habit patterns, and having habit patterns that involve your kids. Have I hugged my kids today? Have I told my son I'm proud of him? Have I told my daughter that I love her? Have I done those things that are important to them? And do I know what my kids are learning in school? Do I know what their sports things are going on? Making sure that you are.
Have you listened to? Have I listened to my child today with whatever is on their mind?
Yeah, you could sum this up perhaps by just saying, pay attention.
Yeah.
Right. Pay attention and remember. Make it. These are important things to pay attention to. And
that kind of brings us to a conversation we've had before. Some of this goes down to your personality style. My wife is a random act of kindness person, which means she's always attentive. She notices everything because she's always thinking, how can I add value? How can I add value? I'm a words person. So sometimes I'm talking and I'm not thinking, or I'm a gift person. Sometimes I'm giving, but I'm not necessarily in the zone. So there's a different learning edge for all of us when it comes to this, but this is part of the package. And what you said, Robert, is, none of us like disciplining ourselves in this area. And ultimately, that same thing, none of us like discipline. Our children don't like discipline. Some of the issues that we're having in our own family this week is we don't know how to do that. Like we do. It's worked on our other two, but we're figuring it out. It's a new path because our child is he's a different human being. And I was sitting down there just thinking through this today. I was thinking, okay, I've been focusing on the body. Like, how am I going to discipline him? I'm going to put him in timeout, or am I going to spank him, or am I going to make him stand? However, but as we're getting into it, I want to kind of go to our third thing to consider here. When you're at your wit's end as a parent and you're like, I don't know what to do, I want to encourage you, and this could be an entire episode, what we're about to drop, so we're not going to be able to excavate it all, but I want to give it to you. Hopefully, maybe you can rummage it in your minds. But when you discipline your children, make sure you're disciplining their mind, body, heart, and soul.
Absolutely.
A holistic discipline is so important. If we just spank our kids and send them off, I mean, that's on the borderline of abuse thing. Mm-hmm. If we're not explaining to their mind, if we're not engaging their mind, and if we're not saying how that is connected to their heart and that's connected to their soul. And like just this week, and they get it. Like our kids, if you make a practice of this, I promise they get it. Our oldest, he set off our middle this week, man. He set him off, which I don't know. That's not wise because our middle ends it. Okay, don't start
Yes.
it. He will end it, and he started it. And I had to pull my oldest aside and say, Calvin, that was messed up, bro. And he's standing in front of our little pantry. I'm like, what was that? He goes, that was sin. And I said, you're absolutely right. I said, who'd you sin against? He's like, Delmar. I said, who else did you sin against? God. And I looked at him and I said, because my youngest right now, he's saying he's a Christian. Okay, so we're having this conversation in our house. And I said, well, Calvin, you say you're a Christian, you believe in Jesus. Like, when you're a Christian, we're supposed to try to run from sin. He looks at me dead in the eye without missing a beat. He goes, "Why, you sin?" I was like, "I'm disciplining you right now, kid." Not, oh gosh, that hurt. But I'm saying to say they know and they listen, but it takes us engaging it. And sometimes it really hurts. So whenever we are disciplining, I would encourage, and then I'll throw this to y'all because I've seen you do this in your own children. Like when you're disciplining, don't just consider the what, but consider the who and the why behind it as well.
Yes. I mean, when we would discipline our kids, first of all, what works for one child does not necessarily work for another. I know there are some parents who kind of like, this is the way we discipline, whatever it may be. And I know some people have to apply a different approach depending on the different children's personalities. But regardless of what approach you're doing, you're right. When you sit down to discipline your kids, first of all, when you sit down to discipline them, it shouldn't be a thing where right in the heat of the moment you're mad and you just, if you're spanking, then you just spank them, or whatever the consequence is. There should be discussion. There should be talk of, like you were talking about, there's going to be a consequence. Why are you going to get a consequence? And I love how you were saying you ask the question, let him try or her see if they can answer, because they often know usually. And, but we would always have the conversation. So before whatever consequence they received was given out, they knew why, they knew what they should have done, what they did wrong, and what would have been the correct response, and that's another thing that I think is good. Like if somebody does something that was sinful and wrong, we would tell them, instead of doing that, this is how you could have handled that. And then you can kind of teach them moving forward, this is the way we want to behave. But again, I will say when we would have to talk with our kids about that, it's important to also say, like, your youngest or your oldest who had said, "Well, Dad, you sin too." Yeah, I do. And that's why I need a Savior too. That's why I need Jesus too.
And to be able to segue into that is so important. That's that mindfulness coming right into action again, is saying, okay, we're going to get to the high level issue. The low level issue is that my kid has done a tangible thing, but the high level issue is I'm concerned about his soul. I want him to be better. I want him to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And if not, then what we're doing is selfish discipline, which is a lot different than godly discipline, right? Selfish discipline is act better because you're getting on my nerves.
Exactly.
Act better because you're hurting the family name.
Yeah, you're making us look bad. You're making me look like a bad parent. You're making me mad. You didn't do what I wanted, or you didn't do what I told you. But we turn the focus on we sin against God when we're disobeying, when we're doing whatever it is. And that was something that we would talk with our kids, is you have to take it back to the heart issue. We can't just focus on, you ate the cookie when you were told not to, or, just whatever it is. You went outside to play in the backyard when you were supposed to be taking your nap, or, you hit your brother or your sister when, you shouldn't do that. But we have to kind of go back to the heart issue. As as a Christian, how does God want us to treat that other person? Mm-hmm. What does God say about listening to the rules that your parents put down in place? Or, it's just important to take it back to the fact that our sin grieves God. And those always ended up being much better conversations with our kids as we were disciplining, and things that they can take back and listen. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with those layers that we build. They may not, take everything to heart every time you talk about it, but those layers of consistency, and we're giving the same message over and over in everything we do with them. We're giving the same message of we are in need of a Savior. Our sin grieves God, and we as Christians have a responsibility to be moving towards, letting God sanctify us over and over.
I really like the way you frame that. And there's a very tangible thing in what you just said, in the same sense that, brown space keeps us mindful. When we're disciplining, you approach discipline through the gospel. Mm-hmm. So as I'm disciplining my child, before I've administered it, I've already thought about the gospel impact of this. Yep. I've already thought about how this is an affront to who God is. And we bring that component to the discipline, because what our child may not understand at a young age, especially as they get older, is you really care about who they are, not just what they do. Rebellious children, a lot of times, in my 17 years as a student pastor, rebellious children oftentimes are disciplined without regard to their soul, like the highest rebellion. Obviously every kid's different. There's going to be outliers, but a lot of the rebellious kids are just disciplined through that selfish discipline of, hey, you're making me look bad. Hey, you're annoying. Hey, we're trying to sleep. You're keeping us up. Hey, you're doing this. And it's not, hey, you are loved and cared for by me and by God. And this is a lot deeper than just a thing. So when we lean in to discipline, our encouragement, and I'm speaking to myself this week as well, is before you do any of those disciplinary things that God's called you to do, first you run that through the gospel in your heart and then through them.
And something that was really important kind of in there, it's not just who the children are now, it's who they're becoming, right? So when you start seeing a kid, doing a behavior that can become a pattern, right? That can set a trend, so I want to stop that. And that those are things that it's important to tell them, and kids never understand that aspect of it, and so but you say it anyway. I don't want you to become a person who lies all the time. That's why I'm disciplining you for this lie. I don't want you to be a person who cheats and who becomes someone who's dishonest. So that's why I'm disciplining you when you cheated in this game, right? It's important to...
If you still hit your brother when you're adults, it's
Yes.
called assault and you go to jail.
Yes.
That is a conversation
We had that conversation once.
And I think the other thing that's important is, as you have these consistent conversations like April was talking about, that changes over time, right? It's different for every kid, and it's different at every stage of life. And sometimes the stage of life changes overnight. And so what worked yesterday doesn't work today anymore, right? And what worked last week doesn't work anymore this week. And that's because your kids are growing, and sometimes it's because we're growing, right? Maybe I've got a better idea of what the gospel's teaching me about how to treat people, and so I realize the things I let you do 2 weeks ago are no longer okay. It wasn't okay then, I just didn't realize it because my soul was not in the right condition. And so now I've grown, I've matured, I've recognized my sin, like you were talking about earlier. And so the kid says, why is that? Because you sinned too, because you did that 2 weeks ago. It's like, yeah, buddy, I did, and I was wrong. And this is why, and this is what God's teaching me through this. And, we've talked about that kind of humility before, but I think it's really important. And I think those things are really powerful in dealing with kids, especially as they get older and they start to be able to reason.
And when it comes to like our children's behavior, when we're at our wits' end, oftentimes, most of the times, they're going to behave. You're going to get the worst version of them at home. That's their safe place. But it's also important for us to note outside the home, because if they're going to act out at home, then, especially like my children, for example, they act out at home, but when they're at church, they're fine, which we're blessed by that. But they should be the same. So one of the things that I've been thinking through, and I'll share this because this is things that I've seen go well, and that is this. This is our number 4, and that's we really should be working hard to connect our children with godly people as well. Similar to how you said the piano thing, right? I've had parents come up, I've been trying to tell my kid to do this for 5 years, and then you did one little sermon on it, and they listened. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I accidentally supported your values. But it's true. Sometimes sometimes the others have a way of getting through so much more effectively. This is the severe lash of TikTok influencers right now. This is why our culture, because people are able to get into our kids' lives sometimes without us knowing and influence them certain ways. But if we are proactive about influencing them toward good, putting them around good people, putting them around people who share our worldview, that is going to do nothing but enhance the worldview that we have. And when they see, hey, he shares this worldview, then it's reinforced. I've heard it said it's hearing it in stereo. It's hearing godliness in stereo. Growing up, I had a neighbor named Mr. Jim. He was in World War II. He was like 6 foot something, big husky fella. Never got in a hurry to say anything. He grew watermelons and wear overalls. He was the best neighbor. We have a student in our church. His name's Jeff, and he reminds me of Jim. And I'll tell you what, though, I would be having a day, and I would just go over to Jim's house and sit in his front yard. He goes, "What are you worried about, boy? The watermelon's still gonna grow tomorrow." And my parents, I never had to ask to go over there. And it was good to have just that one person. And I've seen, especially depending on where you are, there's a wide spectrum of parents listening. We have some parents, your kid is in a public school system. Maybe it's in a good one. Maybe it's in a bad one. There's lots of different streams they can float in there. How are you influencing that? There's some who are in private school. Hey, I grew up a private school kid. A lot of times it's a public school kid with a better shirt on. I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes it's not. But then in the homeschool space, you have to work because you can become too inclusive, right? In the sense of not getting out as much. So when it comes to connecting yourself with godly people, obviously you have your church, but then also like let them be with your godly friends who may not even be in your church. And I've seen where y'all have actually, your kids participated in competitive speech
and debate,
and that got them close to other kids and their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was a national homeschool, a Christian homeschool high school speech and debate association, and yeah, our club, our local club that we founded as part of it included the whole family unit, and it was a wonderful experience. We loved that.
Yeah, they also
lots
did
of good friendships.
I mean, they've also done sports and karate at various times, and those are things that are important to do, and I think it's don't just gloss over the church thing. It is important, but God did put us in that community first, and a healthy church is a really diverse place, right? There's people whose only unifying thing, is our belief in Christ. And so you might
Seems
have...
like we've heard that somewhere
seems
recently.
like we've heard that.
Maybe a sermon someday.
I don't know, just a couple of days ago, right? But so you might have, Jim the watermelon guy, and then you might have, the chicken farmer, and you might also have the Air Force officer, and you might also have, all sorts of different people.
The real estate agent.
Yeah, the real estate agent, and all these people who have different, life experiences that they can bring and share with your kids and share with your family, and that's really important to be able to do, as you're focusing on all of those things. So, it's but again, the community is not everything, and we were having a conversation with some friends just a week or two ago, and he says, it's weird. I'm not used to having out of church relationships and conversations with church people. To him in his background so far, it had been those were different spheres.
Yeah.
And so you did social things with social people and church things with church people, but you didn't do social things with church people. And it wasn't that there was a hard rule; it's just that it just didn't happen. And so I think it's important to have to set up for your kids and for your family different kinds of things. So we're not just going to get to know our church people at church and Sunday school or a church social. Hey, let's go hang out at the house. Let's go camping with somebody. Let's go do those things that you would do with people that you want your kids to become.
That's a lot. I wish we can do a whole thing on
we can.
the mindfulness of what church you place your child in. I kind of think I think we need to do this one by virtue of your own family, But Robert, you're really true. When some churches are ran off a program, and some are ran off of people. And oftentimes when we get confused on that is when we start thinking, well, that's my people over at church, because what we're really saying is that's the program that's executed for me. I show up and go through it, and it's not a community that exists that I'm a part of, that I'm a contributor in. And this is something we can't start soon enough with our children. Even in our student ministry at our church this summer, we've actually, I'm a little nervous, so we'll know in a few months, but we've scaled back the program into one night a week, but we have like 7 adult leaders, and we've told each one of them, your goal this summer is to have 5 meaningful moments with students outside of church. Take them, show one, go fishing. Got one, James McMillan, take one to the races. Or grab a couple leaders, go to the movies. But if each one of our leaders, 7, does 5 students and they have like good memories made with them, what we're doing is we're saying it's not the program. I'd rather be with you as a person. And what that does is it's connecting our students in our life of our own listeners, connecting your kids to the church folk outside the church building is so important. So,
and that doesn't have to happen through your student pastor, right?
No, it does not.
In fact, it should be something that and it doesn't have to be accidental either. We had parents, we had other families that we saw. It's like, I want what that family has. And so there are some parents that we talked to. It's like, can we just hang out with your kids? Can our kids hang out with your kids? Can our kids hang out with you? Can we do things together? Yeah. We need to do things together as a family. And generally, if you're looking at one of those families, those people are also willing to do that because they're either doing that same thing or they've done something similarly.
Yeah, and that being said, it again requires us in our social life not to be in that brown space. How am I thinking about it? When I'm at church, who am I looking at that this is a person that's I can be a friend with? There's a couple guys at our church right now. I just started meeting with them from coffee 2.5 years ago. And now we're friends. Like we're buddies. And it has nothing to do is we just have coffee. And now, they do come to our church. That wasn't the plan back then. It was just I'm meeting with some guys. So all that to be said, we do all these things. We get around the people that we want to influence our kid. We try to holistically discipline them. We're shifting our priorities. We're doing the things, Lord. What do we do? My kid just punched his older brother in the face over a toy dinosaur. Well, that's where we have
memories.
Yes. We have but one thing to offer you. And I think this is the biggest thing, because apart from this, nothing would happen. The world wouldn't sustain in orbit. Nothing could live. And that is this. We have to trust in the sovereignty of God.
Absolutely.
Number 5, you got to trust God's plan. You have to remember, and I have to remind myself, God has a unique plan for my child in his earthly life that requires just the exact amount of grace that God's going to give him. No more, no less. I'm there with him on that path, but I have to trust that God's leading that path.
Yeah, and that is so difficult to do because, like we started off, God calls us to teach our kids. He calls us to discipline our kids. He tells us, he commands us to do these things, right? And not just to be, but to do things. And those things have consequences. And it's obvious that those things have consequences. But yet, in his sovereignty, he's prepared all of those ways. And he's set that up for us. And he's prepared the path for our kids the way that they should go. And right now, in this moment, if you're the parent with that kid, and maybe the kid's not, punched his brother over a dinosaur because they're 6 and 8. It's, maybe the kid's in trouble with the law because he's 16, right? And it's so hard to rest in that and say, God, you've got this, even if I don't. And, it's easy when things are going well to say that. It is really tough when things are going poorly to say that and to trust it, because we want to jump in and fix things. I want to go do, I'm the dad. I want to go protect. I want to do the things, right? I want to keep my kid from getting hurt. I want to keep my daughter's heart from being broken. But that may not be a thing that I can do, because I need to trust that God will guide them and trust them. And especially as your kids get older, as our kids have transitioned out, teenager into young adulthood, that's been really tough for us to do, to release them and say, nope, they have to make their own decisions. We trust that what we have tried to do in the past to set them up, and what we have tried to do to guide them on that path, and watching what God has done in their lives, which has been amazing for our 3 kids. But to trust that, yep, now they can make those decisions on their own. And sometimes they're not the decisions that we would make, but it needs to be something that they do, that they own, that they carry through. And then it's been, again, exciting to watch, God work in their lives.
Surrendering the plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's so hard. And, I say that having witnessed my own father doing that to me, and I know right now there's parents in transition doing that. And I'll just offer, something, as you grow your relationship with your child, when your child's young, it's caregiver, nurturer. Then as, they grow into the teenage years, it becomes, more like a coach, right? And I'm going to coach you through this. And then college, it turns more into like a mentor situation, because coaches can say, go run more laps. Mentors, like you're in college. And then once they, whether it's at college or career, whatever, there's going to be a space there where our biggest hope is that one day you get to look at your child and say, you're my friend. Not that they shouldn't have been your friend the whole time, but just being able to look and say, we made it this far, like we're friends. Mm-hmm. That's our biggest hope, is that our prayer for you is that your daughter, your son becomes children of the Lord and co-heirs in Christ with you. And one day you get to have that joy. But right now it can seem so far off when you're in the trenches and you're kind of at the end of your rope. But just like what Scripture tells us, we trust in the Lord and lean not on our own understanding. Acknowledge Him. And I will encourage you, and last encouragement I have in this is, think back through some of the severe times in your life when you're like, I have so much anxiety, I don't know how it's going to work out. You're still alive. You're still here. How many times has He been faithful in your past when you've just been obedient to Him? He's going to continue to be faithful to His will in your life. And as long as we're willing to submit to that, that is where we find our joy as parents, kind of the full circle. Mm-hmm. Yes, we're all the way back. My priorities are now aligned because I'm back with the Lord. Mm-hmm. So all that to be said, this has been a good one today, y'all. We were going to get into Dan's sermon, but I know like we're almost at our time. But I do want to share, and because he did such a good job. We're in Galatians right now, and we're getting into the middle. The middle is kind of like swimming in mud, because he's saying some of the things over and over, but he's using different illustrations to build this concept. And, this past week, Dan, he was really talking about how Jesus brings the law and grace together. It seems like these things shouldn't exist together. You're going to follow the rules, or you're going to burn in hell, or you're going to get grace and now you can do whatever you want. But Jesus brings them in order. And in context of this conversation, how clear is that our role in the family?
Oh, yeah. I was just sitting here thinking, but that as parents, that is, I mean, that whole area, how do you discipline with the law and the law and the grace?
Yeah, you hold the standard, but you do it in love. You see, you want to offer the grace to say, you don't have to be punished for the mistake you made, but at the same time, there's a consequence, right? And that is exactly our role as parents, is to bring that and to show that balance. And again, like you said a second ago, if we are starting from the appropriate foundation and we're putting, God's will for our lives first, then that becomes so much easier, because now I'm able to model what Christ has done for me. And one of the things that's been through this through this whole passage of, through this whole book of Galatians is, we can offer that grace because we remember what God's done for us. Yeah. We can do these things because we know that is what Jesus did for us. That is where we are, where He has brought us, and so now we can bring other people in there as well.
It's like you receive grace, you give grace, and it's inside your house and outside your house. So I hope it's been encouraging. I'm going to take this conversation to heart. We'll take it to practice. I hope any of you parents listening, whatever stage you're in being the parent, whether it's the nurturer, caregiver, coach, mentor, friend, and whatever it is, that hopefully today you feel like you have a little bit more centered up and a little more harmony, because that's what we're going for. My name's Delmar.
I'm still Robert.
And I'm April.
Have a great week.